Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Is wrestling.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Deaner. I am Cody Deaner, and I am a professional wrestler. I'm a professional wrestling producer with TNA Impact Wrestling. I'm a traveling professional motivational speaker. I'm actually traveling and speaking right now. I'll tell you that in a minute. But before I do, let me also tell you some of my other jobs. My favorite job ever is this next one that I always say, and that is that I am a father of 4 amazing children. I'm also a husband to a beautiful wife, and I am a vice president of a fitness group, Reaper Fitness Group to be exact, and Rest When Dead Clothing, who are a proud sponsor of this podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, you see the shirts behind me, you see the hat on me. If you can't see it because you're driving down the road, listen to this right now on your podcast platform of choice. Why don't you pull over on the side of the road, get out your phone, go to restwhendead.ca, see the entire collection, and buy yourself a t-shirt, including a Cody Deaner signature series shirt on now. Follow them on Instagram at restwhendeadclothing. Where am I right now? I'm not pulling over on the side of a road somewhere. No, I am speaking right now for Impact Wrestling. I'm making an impact right now. If you're listening to this on Thursday when this episode drops, I am in Las Vegas, the home of my guest today. It's very serendipitous how this all came to be, but I am currently making an impact speaking at some boys and girls clubs across Las Vegas as a way to reach out to the community, give back to the community of Las Vegas. We will be coming to Las Vegas for Hard to Kill this January at the Palms, and we're going to be rebranding, going back to our roots. We will now once again be TNA Wrestling. You hear those chants all across the world. I'm super pumped and excited for it, and not just the fact that we get to go into Las Vegas and start 2024 with a bang as a company, but because TNA wants to make an impact. And one of the ways that we're doing that is we are going into communities like Nevada, Southern Nevada, boys and girls clubs, and I'm sharing my story with them. If you want to kind of hear more about how TNA is doing that, go to impactwrestling.com/making an impact, and you can see all the charities and nonprofit organizations that we support and work with. And one of those is the Boys and Girls Clubs all across this country. I have the privilege this week of going into some Boys and Girls Clubs, sharing some positive stories with them about both my successes and my failures to try to motivate them and inspire them and let them know that they can follow their dreams no matter what their situation. I'm a kid that grew up in a small town in the middle of nowhere. I was small, skinny. Everyone teased me, said, "Hey, you can't be a professional wrestler." And well, I did it, and I'm doing it, and I love it. And I love inspiring young people with my story and letting them know that no matter what their dream is, whether that's being a professional wrestler, being an athlete, being a dancer, being a scientist, being a police officer, whatever it may be, they can accomplish their goals. And I'm doing that right now, courtesy of the wonderful wrestling company I work with, Impact Wrestling, going into those communities. And we're going to give some tickets away to some kids that normally would never get to go to a professional wrestling show. So I'm super excited to be letting the kids know that they get to come and see the re-debut of what is known as TNA Wrestling this January with Hard to Kill at the Palms. Now, you heard me say a couple weeks ago, if you're an avid listener of this podcast, if you're not an avid listener, this is your first time, welcome. You're going to enjoy today's episode. But I said a few weeks ago that I wasn't just in Las Vegas making an impact, even though it's the main reason I was there. I've been so blessed. I've been able to turn it into a kind of mini pleasure trip / vacation, I guess. I don't know, whatever the heck you want to call it. I don't always get to do this, but this trip in particular was very special because I got to bring Mrs. Deaner along with me to Las Vegas. She's never been. I've been many times for work, and this week I was able to book my flight the day early, book a flight for Mrs. Deaner a day early, and we've been able to see some shows, go to the Grand Canyon, which is something I've never done. I highly encourage anyone who has the opportunity to go there, go see it. It's just a sight to behold. So I've got to do some wonderful things with my wife, which is so it's really actually tells you, if you're a new listener to this podcast, what this podcast is all about. It's wrestling is life is wrestling, and how the world of wrestling can collide in an amazing positive way with our quote unquote real life. Well, that's happening for me this week. I'm going around, going to youth groups, sharing with them my real life journey and struggle in wrestling, and the lessons I've learned along the way. And I'm doing it while doing it as part of a wrestling company. And while I'm on a wrestling trip, I'm also deciding to use that wrestling trip to make a cool personal life trip with my wife to Las Vegas. Man, the worlds are colliding in a wonderful way. And that's what this podcast is all about. So again, if you are new to this podcast, welcome. You can support this project by checking out my sponsors, Rest When Dead Clothing, restwhendead.ca, or you can go to my Pro Wrestling Tee store if you want a Wrestling is Life is Wrestling shirt. We got those up. They're brand new. It's over at prowrestlingtees.com/Cody Deaner. You can get a cameo from me, personal video message. Maybe you want a Christmas present for a family member. Go to cameo.com/Cody Deaner. You can get that today. I love doing those. Or you can become a patron. If you get to the end of this episode and you're like, man, I want to hear some more from Chris Bay. I would love to hear a bonus story from Chris Bay about a really cool in-ring incident that happened recently in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Well, you can do that right now by going over to patreon.com/Cody Deaner. You get a bonus story from Chris Bay, as well as all of my previous guests that I've had on the show back in the archives. Bonus stories from Joe Henry, Josh Alexander, Crazy Steve, Courtney Rush, 2 bonus stories from Jessica Havoc, and so much more. That's over on patreon.com/Cody Deaner. Help me bring this podcast to you for free each and every week by maybe going and supporting me with a few bucks over on my Patreon. You heard me say that my worlds are colliding between wrestling is life, and there's all these connections. Well, one of those awesome connections is that, like I said, I'm in Las Vegas, which is the home of today's guest. This is part 2 with the uber talented Chris Bay. He's not just a professional wrestler. He's a musician, and he's really an all-around amazing, cool guy. And you learned that last week if you listened to part 1. If you didn't listen to part 1, go back and do that right now. Where we left off is I asked Chris, what is one main takeaway, life lesson that you got when you were in wrestling school? And we didn't hear his answer because that was last week's cliffhanger. Well, we're going to get that answer right now, and it takes us on a really cool journey with some interesting characters and wrestlers that you might not expect Chris Bay to talk about. There's one story in particular this week that, man, I was not expecting to get it from Chris Bay, and it's pretty freaking awesome, just like last week. Now, last week was really kind of the origin story. We heard all about where Chris grew up and some mentors in his life, both in his life in, like I say, quote unquote, real life, from his principal, a teacher that was awesome to him when he was trying to find a wrestling school, and then also his wrestling influences like CM Punk and his straight edge lifestyle, or the really inspiring life story and journey of Eddie Guerrero. They all made Chris decide he was going to move away from home during the dramatic death of his father, and he decided to join a wrestling school, and he did that, and now we're learning his number one lesson and takeaway from that, and then the really cool, amazing journey that continues on from there. So without further ado, let's listen to part 2 with the talented wrestler / musician just all around awesome dude, my friend and soon to be yours, Chris Bay. This is a hard question. You might not be able to answer it. I don't know if I'd be able to answer it if somebody asked me this, but is there one main lesson or takeaway that you got from wrestling school that like has stuck with you?
The first piece of advice I ever got in wrestling is the best advice I've ever gotten in wrestling and in life, because like you said earlier, these things are connected. Wrestling and life, they're connected. The lessons you learn are connected. So I remember there was I'm going a little bit side to get back around to this. But I remember there was a customer who would always come into our restaurant. Shout out Rockland's Barbecue in Alexandria, Virginia. You ever in Alexandria, go to Rockland's Barbecue, the best barbecue in the area, hands down.
All right.
There was a customer who would always come in, and I'd worked there for 2 years, so I'd served this guy for a year and a half up until this point, until one day he came in wearing a "I'm a Jim Cornette guy" t-shirt, and in my mind I was like, no one just has a Jim Cornette t-shirt. Like, this guy must be a wrestling fan of a crazy degree. So we ended up having that conversation. I was like, hey man, I want to be a wrestler one day. He was like, really, really? Well, I know Glenn Jacobs. I help him out with a lot of his, his work, that he's doing politically and stuff. And I was like, oh, really? That's crazy. That's small world. So about 2 weeks before I moved to Vegas, I remember one day I'm sweeping the restaurant, and it was perfect timing. I'm sweeping the restaurant. There's no customers, just him. Shout out to Jack, my boy Jack. It was Jack. He's sitting there on his laptop, and he gets a call. And then he like signals me over. So I walk over, and he like shows me the call on Glenn Jacobs. And I'm like, what? He's on the phone. So he's like, hey, Glenn, I have a friend here with me. His name's Chris. He's moving out to Vegas in a couple weeks to pursue pro wrestling. You mind talking to him for a second and maybe giving him some advice? Hands me the phone. I take the phone, and I'm just like, and here's me. Like, I remember, like the year 2000, walking around a carnival with my parents having this Kane backpack on.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah.
Backpack, like here, I used to, during this era, I'm wearing a rag over my head in the gym because I'm thinking about 03 Kane, like, so here I am like, freaking, what? Okay. Like, so I asked him, I was like, hey man, like, I'm going to start wrestling soon. Do you have any advice for me? And he said something that was so simple, but changed my life and my perspective and my learning process and the way I treat people. But what he told me was, he said, he basically said, there's a lot of people who will give you advice or, suggestions on what you should do. What you should do is give everyone the respect to listen, but only apply to you what's applicable. And for me, I was like, okay. So give people the respect. If they choose to want to give me critiques or want to give me advice or want to try to give me a helping hand, just give people that respect to listen. But you don't have to apply everybody's advice. Okay. Simple enough. Yeah. But that right there changed my life, because as you know, people are going to tell you a million ways of how you should do stuff. I had a student the other day hit me up from Future Stars and ask me like, hey, what do you think about this name I've been coming up with? I've asked a lot of people. They said they don't really like it. I said, well, here's the thing. Do you like it? They're like, yeah, well, I like it. And I was like, well, there's a lot of stupid names out there that exist in wrestling, but they work because those people made it work. So it's up to you to make it cool. It's up to you to make it work. It's not my decision. If you like it, make it cool, make it work. Don't take a million people's advice at once, because you'll never make a decision. It'll all cloud your mind. It'll never register. You can give these people the respect to listen when they give you this suggestion, but do what you want to do. Do what works best for you. And then from there, you will find out what works best. Yeah. And that advice just really changed my life, because there were so many people early on who were interested in giving me critiques or whatever. Even people who came up in rude ways, if you look at it on paper, to give me advice in the beginning. And instead of me being like, hey, forget this person or whatever, I stopped and said, what are they actually trying to say to me? Yes. Actually, what they're saying to me, they're trying to help me. Yeah. But they're actually trying to help me. Okay. Matter of fact, I appreciate this person. Okay, I get it now. I see what they're doing. It just changed the way I think and the way I've maneuvered in life, inside and outside of wrestling. I'm forever grateful for that advice.
Oh man, what a cool story. I mean, that's just a cool story just in terms of the advice that you got, but the
Yeah,
fact that you were on the phone with Kane at a restaurant, like there's so many lessons on top of that. Like I was
yeah,
just thinking as you're even just saying that, like good for you for even going up to that guy and saying, "Hey man, cool t-shirt." Like I'm a wrestling fan too, and just even having that social interaction, which then
yeah.
led to this relationship, which then led to this moment. I believe everything happens for a reason.
100%.
100%. Like
100%.
you were
Yeah,
meant to have that conversation with Glenn Jacobs on the phone, which is
yeah.
amazing.
It came
But
full circle about a year later too. I can tell you that story too if you want, but it
yeah,
did come full. Yeah, a
how
year. So
so?
so about a year later, I did extra work for the first time because I started wrestling, or moved to Vegas two
Wait, hold
weeks
up, hold
later.
up, hold up, hold up. You did extra work like 1 year after you started training. You were doing extra work.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, dude, I hate
yeah.
you,
I was spoiled, man. I went
dude.
to the right location.
That's
Right
that's true.
people.
Good on
Yeah,
you, man. Because it took
yeah,
me like 5 years before I even got a sniff at maybe even doing extra work. So
yeah.
good on you though. Like
But
I'm
that 5 years probably was all what you needed to be in the right position when you
For
finally
me,
did.
yes, that's my story,
Yeah,
right? This is your story. For
exactly.
me,
Yeah,
it was, but for you, but 1 year, man, that's amazing. Okay, so
yeah,
1 year
yeah.
later, you're doing some extra work. Okay,
So a year later, I'm doing extra work, and I see Kane in catering, and I'm like,
yeah.
I'm gonna go talk to him. Like
Oh,
he's not
good for
doing
you.
anything. He doesn't
Yep.
look busy. I'm gonna go talk to him.
Yeah.
So I went over and introduced myself. Hey, my name's Chris. We actually spoke about a year ago on the phone through our mutual friend Jack. You gave me advice on pro wrestling and how to get, how to maneuver. And here I am. I just wanted to come introduce myself, let you know that so far it's been going well. Clearly, I'm here right now.
Yeah.
And he was just like, "Oh yeah, man, that's awesome," And we had a small conversation. It was cool. About 20 minutes, maybe an hour later, he's walking down the hall. He's a big guy. I'm
Yeah.
I'm, I'm 5'9", bro. He's a
Yeah.
massive guy.
Yeah.
He's walking down the hall and he goes, "Hey, did you tell Jack that you saw me?" And me, I'm young. I'm doing extra work. I'm not just gonna go text my friend like, "Hey man, I'm doing extra work. I'm backstage at WWE. I just saw Kane." So I
Yeah.
was like, "Actually, no, I haven't." So he goes, "Oh, let me send him a picture." Pulls out his cell phone and takes a selfie with me.
Whoa.
I'm just like, I take the selfie with him, and then he's like, "Awesome, thanks," and he walks away. Like 20 minutes later, my phone blows up where Jack just messaged me like, "Bro, what you with Glenn right now?" And then he sends me the picture that Glenn
Yeah.
sent them, and I just was like, "Bro, Kane just took a selfie with me. What is my life right now? Like, what is
That.
my life right now?
Oh, dude,
Crazy." I still look at that
that's
photo all the time.
that is so unbelievable. Everything
Yeah,
happens for a reason, man. Like, so man, I could ask a million questions based on that, but that I'm gonna let that story stand alone because that is amazing.
yeah,
Uh,
it's crazy.
so one thing I remember from, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I always like to ask people, what was your first big break? And this is
Yeah,
one of them for you, like getting to do some extra work, taking a selfie with Kane that he took, by the way.
right. Yeah,
Did you do like WWE, Ring of Honor, Impact, like stuff, all like really within a short span of one another? Like, wasn't there like within 1 week you did like everything or something, or it was like in a really tight moment, right? Is that
yeah,
true?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So what's the
2019.
story there?
Yeah, 2019 was one of those years where, and once again, the power of manifestation and doing the work. If you
Mhm.
have a plan, I tell everybody it's so important to have a plan or have a goal because it keeps you working towards something. And I remember 2018, I was having a really good like indie rookie year, and I was calling it 2018. That was the theme.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was talking to Scorpio Sky, and he goes, "Yeah, 2018 is almost over. What are you gonna do for 2019?" And I go, "Get signed. Like, I guess that's what's next, right?" Like,
Yeah.
and when I realized that, I was like, how the hell do I get signed? Like
Ah,
how does one actually get a contract? Like, sounds so far fetched. Okay, well,
yeah.
I'm gonna do everything I can to get to the best version of myself. So that meant at the time, like I stopped going to the gym consistently because I was like, man, this is hard to go to the gym and wrestle at the same time. I can't afford a gym membership right now. You know what? When I get signed, I'll go back to the gym and I'll get in shape. But then
Mm.
2019, I was like, man, if I don't get in shape, I'm not gonna get signed. Like I have everybody who's signed is doing the work. They were doing the work before they got there. I have to do the work now. So I started getting my body in the best shape, started getting my mind in the best shape, started trying to have the best quality matches, started really trying to present myself as a character on the indies and come up with this. That's when I really started leaning into the character of the ultimate finesser and really making it like a thing. And then September rolled around of 2019 and Ring of Honor was coming to Vegas. Impact was coming to Vegas. And WWE was going to come at the very beginning of October, like the first week or something. And then those were at the very end of September. So it was like bleeding in across to each other. And in my mind, I was like, man, what if I, at this point in my life, 23 years old, what if I'm able to do all three in one shot? And that's the slogan, one shot. So I was like, yeah, what if in a perfect world, what if I'm able to do this? Yeah. Well, there's only one way to do it, right? I got to try. I got to give it a shot. And, Impact, fortunately, I had been making a good rapport with Impact over that course of that year. And that was my goal at the time. When I first worked for Impact in 2018, I knew from that first day, I was like, this is where I want to work. This is where I want to work. I'd done extra work with WWE. I thought it was cool, dream come true. I had done, Ring of Honor, like ring crew with them, and then I'd had a match for Future Honor up until that point. So I was like, okay, got that out the way. But, I grew up watching TNA. I grew up watching WWE, and I didn't know. I only heard about Ring of Honor when CM Punk name dropped it in the pipe bomb. But I never went and looked at it. So for me, I didn't have any interest in actually going there. But when I saw and felt the Impact locker room and felt everybody there and saw the product live, I was like, oh yeah, this is where I want to get signed to. This is where I'm going to pursue a contract. So at the time, Impact had already started liking me a little bit. So they had me wrestle for the X Division Championship against Jake Christ, and then they had me wrestle a match against Daga. And these were matches where I actually got to get some of my stuff in. So I was like, all right, this is going in a better direction. And then Ring of Honor was around, and Shane Taylor Promotions, and he was like, yeah, come out with me, hold up the Ring of Honor TV title. And I was like, sweet, I'll do that, good deal. And then I had a match against the Bruisers, I believe, and a tag match against those guys. And I was like, all right, sweet, there's a match right there. And then here's WWE, and at the time I lived in this crappy small apartment right down the road from T-Mobile Arena, and I got the invite to do WWE at the T-Mobile Arena, and I was like, man, you know what? Because I had an indie booking that day, and I got the invite. And right before the promoter confirmed it, I was like, hey, I got to pull out. Sorry, something else came up.
I want to tell you about CEOFit.ca. Their byline is simple: conquer, evolve, overcome. It's hard to overcome obstacles and conquer your goals alone. We all need a little help. That's where CEOFit.ca comes in. CEOFit.ca offers the world's best nutritional supplements and will ship them right to your door. You need a little boost for your pre-workout? We got that. Guys, you getting older and noticing your energy levels are decreasing? Well, that's probably because your testosterone levels are decreasing. CEOFit.ca has a variety of natural test boosters to increase your test levels and to help you crush your workouts. We got fat burners, special seasonings and syrups to help flavor your meals. And what about your old noggin? Don't just evolve your muscles, evolve your brain. We got nootropics and all the latest supplements to improve brain function. And if you're in Canada, all orders over $120 include free shipping. That's right, I said free shipping. So go check out CEOFit.ca today. That's CEOFit.ca.
And I was like, you know what? I had this would have been my third time doing extra work at WWE, but I knew I didn't want to go there. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this for the opportunity that if I'm able to pull off all three, it would just be insane. Like, but I was 100% decided in my brain that if I didn't get a match that day for WWE, I wasn't going to do extra work again, because I was like, no, I want a contract at Impact, and by the time WWE probably comes back, I'm praying I already got that contract. Like, it's got to happen soon. 2019 is almost over. This is my goal of the year. It's almost over. I got to make this happen. So like, I was adamant that I wasn't going to do extra work ever again for WWE if I didn't get a match this time. And I showed up that time, and the best version of myself that I had been at the point, working my ass off all year and improving myself, improving my physique, my look. My hair was nice and blonde, knowing people now because I've met more people who work there, and everything just worked out how it was supposed to. I showed up, and they needed someone to wrestle on 205 Live, and I was the guy that was chosen. And the whole day was just full of anxiety because, things can always change. And I was just like, man, I pray they don't pull this match from me, because I need to knock this off my bucket list. Not only that, but I need to solidify myself as a young Vegas legend right now by doing this triple shot.
Yeah.
Episode aired. It was live. It was, 205 Live was airing live at the time. So it aired the same day when Impact was on Fridays at the time. So I was in a segment with the Rascals that night while being on 205 Live.
Oh, man.
Previously being on Ring of Honor like a couple days before.
Yep.
And I just remember when I got home, like just breaking down and just crying.
Yeah.
I just felt like everything that I had been through and everything. Like, I remember a couple weeks before that having a conversation on the crappy stairs of that crappy apartment, having a conversation with my mom about how hard it was, and her just crying through the phone and telling me to come home. And then my brother's like calling me and telling me, hey man, just come home, bro. Like, give wrestling a break, come home. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I will not do that. I refuse. I told him, I said, I will go broke and be homeless here before I ever go back, because I have to do this. This is what I was born to do. This is what I love. This is the only thing that makes me feel like my life means anything. And I know I know you can't understand that.
Yep.
But this is my life. This is my journey. And this is the only thing that makes me feel like I have anything to contribute to anything. I don't feel like me when I'm doing anything else. I don't feel like I'm me when I'm working at the restaurant. I don't feel like I'm me even when I'm in the gym. I don't feel like I'm me doing anything other than being in a wrestling ring, being around a wrestling ring, being in a wrestling locker room. That's where I feel like I'm me. And they couldn't understand. So at this point, after doing the triple shot, I just broke down, because I knew like that everything everyone ever told me all my life was completely wrong. And not only that, but I got to do it as me. I showed up on Ring of Honor as Chris Bay. I showed up on Impact Wrestling as Chris Bay. I showed up on 205 Live WWE as Chris Bay. And while the T-Mobile Arena chanted Bay, Bay, Bay because I'm a local and they seen me from the beginning, I heard Bay, 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 and that's my dad's last name. And I thought,
oh wow,
we did it. We did it. All them WWE events you took me to, we did it. No one can take this away from me. We did it.
Oh man, that's so beautiful. I love that. I one thing that's really standing out to me, it actually comes full circle to one of the first things that you said, in that you were hanging around with guys when you were young and you weren't being your true self. And they weren't, so you weren't making the right decisions, and you decided, no, I got to be me. And when you're just you, your authentic self, and you surround yourself with the right people, and you would only attract the things that are for you. And then that's when things go your way. And then you still have those same friends that when you were your true self, they're still your friends to this day. What's so cool to me is you found success, manifested that success, doing that one shot of all three of those promotions as you, as Chris Bay, as the person you were meant to be, with your dad's last name. Like, that is amazing. That's so unique. That is so important as well, that success comes when you're your true self.
100%, man. You can't fake it. You can't fake it. You can try, but it ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work.
It ain't gonna work. Do you? I appreciate your time. We've been talking for an hour already. I could talk to
We
you,
can keep
man.
going, man.
Man.
I love this, man. I'm not hating this.
Okay, so one thing that I wanted to ask was, so you have this moment. How long was it before you actually signed your deal with Impact? And before I answer that, I can also relate to your story because when I first got signed to TNA in 2009, within the same week, I did WWE extra work and I did Impact extra work, or in TNA extra work. And I knew at the end of that week, TNA is where I want to be. This is the locker room I want to be involved in. I had all those same feelings. I'm like, this is my place. This is where I want to be. I can relate to that 100%. And that's back in the TNA days, but it's even more so now. Again, I did when I got re-signed right around this. I re-signed in 2018. So right around the time that you were doing your stuff was when I got back on their radar and doing work with them again. Again, I had all the same feelings. So we can talk about that as well because I can relate to those feelings. But how long was it after you did those 3 tryouts that you put your name on that dotted line and you accomplished that goal that people said you weren't going to be able to accomplish?
It was probably just a short couple of weeks. Yeah.
Okay.
It was by the end of the month. It was by the end of the month of
October. So you got the year you made it in the 2019. You did it. Okay, you made it. Okay, sweet. I love it. Yeah.
So the day after 205 Live was when Scott reached out to me and let me know that it was time, that I had done my due and it was time for them to get new talent. And I was one of the new talent that they were interested in. And I was on my way to a show when it happened. I was on my way to a FSW show. I was the champion at the time, and I had to defend the title that night. So I'm on my way to that show, and I get this message from Scott D'Amore, and I'm like, okay, wow, here it is. And he's like, D'Lo's going to reach out to you. I'm like, cool. And then, maybe like 30 minutes later, I get a DM from D'Lo, and he's like, hey, what's your number? And I didn't want to fade him, but at the same time, I have a show to go to. I have a match to do. So I'm trying to stay locked in. Yep. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to get too sidetracked right now. Let me handle this show, and then I'll get back to D'Lo. I'll get back to Scott when I have the proper response ready. I can't just message back like, yes, It's not professional. I can't. Let me take it piece by piece. So once I get to the show, my friend at the time comes up to me and he goes, hey, D'Lo hit me up asking for your number. I gave him your number. I'm like, okay, so he's like reaching out to people now. Okay, well, all right, well. And then I go out to do the match and I'm making my rounds, like making my entrance, and I'm walking around the little barrier and I see D'Lo sitting right there in the back. And I'm like, he pulled up. Oh my God. He came and pulled up on me. Oh, wow, this is real. Like, I can't avoid this now, So I had the match. It was a good match. And then afterwards, me and him spoke and we talked. And I had already known D'Lo because, of course, trainer of it and Future Star. So I'd already worked under him quite a bit. Yeah. So, we had a great conversation about it. And, how it goes. Let me look at the paperwork. I've never signed a contract before. Let me have some people look at it and make sure it's all new, and we'll respond when I can. And by the end of the month, I signed it, and they were like, yeah, sweet. We got this amount of shows already left for the rest of the year. We're coming back to Vegas in the beginning of the year, and that's where we'll start. We'll start right then and there. And I was like, all right. And at the time, I had to kayfabe it, and I was like trending on Twitter because it was like the Sign Chris Bay movement that was going on.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
So people are still like thinking I'm not signed, So but over here, I signed the deal I wanted already. They don't know it, but I've already signed the deal that I've dreamt of. I'm just sitting here waiting and trying to figure it out. And it was just, I remember thinking, and I just saw a video that came up on my phone. It was on this day, one of those memories, and it was 4 years ago, and it was when I signed the contract. And what I put on the caption was, "Everything changes." And I'm forever grateful for Impact. I'm forever grateful for Scott and D'Lo and all of you guys on the roster, man, for not being jerks, for letting a guy like me who wasn't a part of your roster come in and do extra work and help out and not making me feel like I didn't belong. You guys really have a family there. Like you said, when you saw that in 2009, you were like, this is the place you want to be.
Yep.
When I saw it, like you said, you came back in 2018. That was when I first saw it. So when I came, you were there. You know, you were probably there at Sam's Town, that show, and you were a part of that. You were part of the people who didn't make me feel like I didn't belong. So like, I'm so grateful for all of you guys for helping me see that no matter what I've read growing up about locker rooms and how people are jerks and this and that, whatever, y'all showed me that you could be respectful, cool, kind, in a community and still put on a kick-ass product. And I'm so grateful for being able to see that with my own two eyes and live that with my own with my own experience, because now here I am 4 years later telling the story, and so grateful and no regrets in my journey.
Yeah, that's amazing, dude. I'm really interested to hear you answer this question.
Yeah.
Because how long was it before you got signed? How many years were you on the indies? Like,
it was exactly 3 years from my debut.
Okay, so you've been signed longer than you haven't been in your career. Okay,
I just hit 7 years. Yeah.
Okay, so this is I haven't talked to someone in this scenario to ask this question, because this is very unique, because it's very rare that you talk to somebody who, you know, in that short of a career has actually been signed longer than they weren't. Because like I said, for me, it took me 10 years. What's harder from your experience, getting signed or staying signed?
That's a great question. That's a really great question. And I've never been asked that. I've never even heard anyone ask that question. So I just want to, first of all, give you your props for that question, because that's a really good question. I think with the right momentum, it's easy to get signed, but it's hard to stay there, you know, because lightning strikes, you know, lightning can strike, but lightning doesn't strike every day. You know what I'm saying? So like on that odd chance that lightning strikes and you get signed, sweet. But how do you stay at the dance? You know, like how do you stay? I think about stuff like that all the time, you know, like it's human. You know, we just signed Leon Slater, right? For TNA. And depending on where I want to sit in the perspective, I can look and go, wow, they just signed a new young up and coming guy. Like, this guy could be coming from my spot. You know, like, but me, I'm not the type to think like that. Instead, I'm like, man, my spot is my spot. No one takes my spot. You know, like, I do me. No, I don't try to be anybody else. But like, that's a real pressure that people think about. I understand that that's a real pressure that people think about, them being replaced by people, because new people come along and filter in. He's hot right now. I pray he has longevity that goes forever, because I want everybody to succeed. You know, I don't fear losing my spot, but I know how hard it is to keep that spot. He's hot right now. I want him to keep that heat, you know, like which is not easy to do. He's made his splash now. I met him maybe 6 months ago when I wrestled him in the UK for 1PW, and I thought he was great. And then we did a show in LA a couple months ago, and, you know, I remember him asking me like, hey, you mind, you know, watching my match and giving me critiques? And I thought just that alone, you know, like, okay, this guy wants to learn something. This guy has initiative, you know, like, so now seeing him being a part of the team, I'm like, okay, this is great, because now all that information that he wants to learn, he's going to learn it from all the top guys, all the pros. We have the roster now that he will be surrounded by constantly to give him that information that's going to help him grow and hopefully help him stay the course. I think it's harder to stay, man. I think it's harder to stay than it is, because it's an investment they take in you. You have to make a return in the investment.
Are you like me? Are you someone who is always striving to succeed, move on to the next goal, can't sit still? I know how you feel. If you're going to live like that with no time to rest, you need to wear the clothes to match your never say die mindset. You need to check out Rest When Dead clothing. Rest When Dead offers premium, top-of-the-line quality fitness attire with wicked awesome designs that let you show the world that you're all about putting in the work and pushing onward and upward toward your goals. Check out the new collection like the Legends Never Die tee. On the back it says, "Today we make history, tomorrow we do it again." Or my personal favorite, the very popular Conquer Everything tee. Ladies, don't worry, we got stuff for you too. We got special women's tanks and women's tee cuts just for you, just so you can tell the world you kick ass even more than the dudes in the gym. Also, check out the new Signature Series. I've got a brand new Cody Deaner signature shirt, and so does a few other TNA Impact Wrestling stars like Crazy Steve and Jody Threat. Shop the entire collection now at restwhendead.ca. That's restwhendead.ca. And the competition never ends. I think a lot of indie guys that struggle on the indies for a long time, that it's so competitive, and they think that it's harder to get signed because they look at their field of competition and there's thousands of guys trying to get these jobs, right? So they think that this competition is, if I can just win this competition and get signed amongst these thousands, then I win the lottery if I get signed. And they're like, okay, I won the lottery, and now the competition's over. But you're right in the sense, like, no, man, the competition just now gets cranked up because you have a spot, but your spot isn't guaranteed. You have to give a return on that investment in order to keep that spot. And then you have to stay fresh. You have to evolve. There's always changes happening. You never know. You got a tag team partner, and then all of a sudden that tag team partner is not there. It's like, oh crap, now what do I do? Well, you've got to evolve. You got to change, because now that spot that you thought was solid is now a little bit different. Like, there's a million scenarios of what can happen.
Yeah.
But you've got to stay fresh, and the competition doesn't go away. If anything, it just gets harder.
It just gets harder. I think to get there, you just have to be authentically you. And I don't mean that by being like just exactly who you are. That's what it is. No, whatever the character is that you portray best, whatever energy you bring best, you have to do that in order to first garner everybody's attention, because you need to be you. They've seen everybody else already. They don't need to see you pretending to be that person or try to be that person. They need to see you be you so they can decide whether they like you or not. And then once they do that, once people decide that, now they pick you up now. Okay, now you have to keep that energy. Now you have to keep that going. So like it's a lot harder, man, because it's people think that it's easier because you have the opportunity to wrestle in front of bigger crowds all the time. Well, you have the opportunity to flop also in front of bigger crowds.
Yeah,
and that
true.
Hurts people here bigger than anything. Like I've done shows in front of nobody. We've done shows in front of nobody during that era.
That's right.
Even shows where we were selling tickets, I've done shows in front of nobody. I've come out hit the curtain and seen two people sitting in the crowd. And I'm like, that's harder to me than doing an arena full of people, because like there's just two people to entertain. How do you make these two people who are sitting here alone with no energy to carry off of? How do you make those two people go crazy? But when it goes nuts, the match with Leon Slater, I fell off a ladder and embarrassed myself in front of all those people live. But they didn't care because they came to see Chris Bay be Chris Bay, and Chris Bay will fall off a ladder. They know that now. But I will fall off a ladder, and it's perfectly fine. Like, you just got to be you.
You just got to be you. So this is a great way for me to end. I appreciate your time. I want to take that, just you being you, and blend that into my last thing that I wanted to talk to you about, which was also plugging what you're doing right now and talking about 2023 content creation. I'm going to blend it all into one thing, because I always want to give my guests an opportunity to plug something that they're doing. And I want to talk to you and let you plug what you're doing with your music, because what you're doing with your music is you're being you. You're also smart enough to realize, hey, it's 2023. We're not just in the wrestling business. We're in show business, and we're in the content creation business. Like, you are your own entity, your own business, and all you're doing is expanding that in different horizons and using all the gifts you have. And one of those gifts is music, and you're rocking it right now. So I just want to give you a chance to plug it, kind of just talk about that, what you're doing with that, maybe why you decided to do that, all those things. Talk about why you're so awesome and you're doing this music stuff, man.
Man, I appreciate the floor. I do. And thank you for having me on this podcast in general, man. I really do appreciate it. Like I said, I don't do too many of these.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that I do are because I like the person, or there's quality information that we can talk about. I hate when I just get on and it's like, where'd you start? Like, okay. But
me too.
Music has always been a part of my life. My grandfather was a singer growing up. He toured the world singing. He used to tour with Elvis, and my mom, we used to go over his house and mess with his equipment. And my mom used to always get on us, hey, get away from that equipment. Diana, let them boys sing. Let them boys sing. We love messing around with the microphones and stuff. And I can remember my earliest memories, like making recording a cassette tape when I was like 6 or 7, like my first mixtape, and showing my parents and being so proud of this. Like, I've always loved music. I've always been inspired by music because I think, unless you're deaf, unfortunately, everybody loves music.
Yeah.
Everybody loves music. I haven't met one person who's like, oh, I don't like music. Everybody loves music. So it's something that you feel. It's something that can put you in a good mood. It can put you in a bad mood. It can literally take whatever emotion you're feeling and amplify it or change it around. So like, I think it's integral. I fell into the idea that you have to do one thing. So when I moved to Vegas to pursue wrestling, I deleted all the music that I had uploaded already. I deleted all the music that I wrote because I was like, I have to focus on wrestling now. And then shortly after living in Vegas, I was like, you know what? Let me start writing again because it's still a creative outlet for me. And then around 2019, I found a studio in Vegas that I liked recording at. So I started going there and recording again. And then 2020 came around. I was like, you know what? When I get 10,000 followers on Instagram, I'm going to start releasing music again. So that was like the goal I set for myself. And I hit 10,000 on Instagram, and I dropped a single called Brain Freeze. And people really liked Brain Freeze. And to this day, people will tell me like, man, I like your new single, but Brain Freeze, like they still go back to this song. I'm like, I'm glad you like it. I'm thrilled you like it. I took the expectation off of it because when I was in high school making music, I was like, man, I got to blow up. I got to make music that people like. I don't care now if people like my music. I make it because I like my music. And because for when I listen to it, it makes me feel good. So if other people can like it, that's the bonus. That's the cherry on top. Like I enjoy it overall. And once the pandemic started, everyone was sitting at home and I was like, oh, it's time to really like do this music stuff because I have the time now because, balancing wrestling and music is not easy, So I had the extra time to put towards it and start really doing it. And I realized that not only do I do it for me, but because at the end of the day, I'm not going to be here forever, but my music can. There's so many artists that I listen to who aren't here anymore. And I'm sure yourself as well, but the music lasts forever, just like my body of work in the ring will last forever. So anything that I have to contribute, I thought I had to do one thing. No, you have to do everything that you're good at because that's what makes you you. And music is something that I'm good at, and that's what makes me me. So that's why I choose to pursue music. That's why I choose to make music, because at the end of the day, it's also something that can help me help wrestling. Because my music fan base isn't based off of people who just know me from wrestling. It's people who hear my music and listen to my music. And then they go, you know what? This guy's a wrestler. I used to like wrestling when I was a kid. Matter of fact, let me come to this TNA show and check out my boy and support my boy. And then they go, dang, I like this person that's on the roster. I like this person that's on the roster. I like that person. Matter of fact, I'm about to start watching TNA on Access. You know what? Matter of fact, let me subscribe on YouTube, Ultimate Insiders. 99 cents, $4.99 a month on YouTube, let me do those things and support this company as a whole because of something that I started supporting just this one individual. We all have the option to do that with our other outlets that we like, to bring more people into this world and into this field and connect more people. I met some fan in Australia who told me at the meet and greet, "Hey, bro, big fan of your music." I was like, "I appreciate that." He's like, "Actually, I was a fan of your music first, and then I found out you were a wrestler." And I was like,
cool.
how did that even, like, how did you get over this part? But it's just possible for that to be the case these days. And just because you don't get the results that you want now doesn't mean that you're not going to get the results that you want down the line. You just have to be consistent in putting it in front of people for more people to hear. The song Brain Freeze I dropped 3 years ago. You've probably never heard it, but if you hear it today, you might like and listen to it for the rest of your life. It's new to you, like podcast. We can drop this right now and get 10 views, but in 5 years, a clip from it goes viral, and now we have millions on this same exact podcast we sat here and did right now in this moment. That's what social media, that's what the entertainment industry has the ability to do for us. So I just want to be authentic and share my stories through my music, and they're just real stories. And I like the fact that people can identify with some of the things that I'm saying, and I like that people can see and hear the growth in my life as well too, because these albums are telling different stories of different parts of my life, or perspectives of where I thought I was in my life, or where I think I am and where I'm going. I have a new single dropping November 20th. It's called Ultimate Finesser. It's based off of the character. It's based off of a new piece of merchandise that I just dropped. It's based off of a song that I wrote on a flight from Perth to Brisbane when I was on this Australian tour. A real story of me being on a flight and then waking up randomly on the flight. Oh, we're still on the flight? Wait, I have a beat to write to? Writing a song, and doing this story. And I shot the video at Future Stars of Wrestling. So the song and video drops November 20th on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, Chris Bay, and on all streaming platforms, Chris Bay, same name. Spotify, Apple, Deezer, Pandora, YouTube, SoundCloud, whatever it is you listen to, it will be there. Awesome. And I have a new album dropping in March 25th. That album will be dropping. It's called Sincerely Him. This is the debut right now of me releasing the title name, because I haven't told anyone this name publicly.
Oh, so, nice. Okay.
Sincerely Him, March 25th. Okay. It's coming. It's a great album. It's produced by my friend No Name Tim, who was a producer who I was a fan of his work for years. He hit me up a year ago letting me know that he's a fan of my wrestling and that he's done music for Tama Tonga and Hikuleo. And I was like, bro, you wouldn't believe this, but I've been a fan of your instrumentals for years. And I didn't know you were a wrestling fan. And then we just became like this. And now the world has connected us. So I'm just grateful that I get to do it. I hope everybody enjoys it. And if you don't enjoy it and you checked it out, I appreciate you for even checking it out. I will eventually make something that you like.
Oh, man, that's great. You're talking about, this comes full circle, because I said at the beginning that I believe in the power of story. And you said, man, that just shifted my thinking, because, you believe in the power of story. And you said in passing, as you're talking about your music, that they're your stories about you, being, the real you, and that there's stories that you're telling, and there's power in story, and there's a lot of power in the story of music, and your music is powerful, man. So I'll put all that info in my liner notes of this podcast so people can all check out Chris Bay and all those streaming platforms, and they can make sure they can find you and what you're doing in the music world. And I appreciate you, man. I want to ask you one extra thing, though. I've taken a lot of your time. I just want to ask you to give me like 2 more minutes, because what I'd like to do is end the podcast and with a cliffhanger, because we're talking about, content creation in 2023 and having different avenues. One thing I'm doing is I have a Patreon where patrons sign up and they get exclusive content just because they're supporting me and my project of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling, and they get bonus content. So can you stick with me for like 2 more minutes after we hit the stop button here and tell me a bonus story that's only for my patrons over at patreon.com/Cody Deaner? And I didn't get a chance to ask you about this, and I think maybe you can just tell me like a quick little tidbit of maybe your recent time in Japan, You got to go to
Yeah.
Japan for a while. If you can tell me maybe one little crazy wild thing that maybe happened to you in Japan, if you got a good one, it can be anything.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a good thing to put over on patreon.com/Cody Deaner. So I'm going to hang out with Chris Bay. If you want to go to be my patron, go to patreon.com/Cody Deaner, and you're going to hear a wicked awesome story about Japan from my buddy Chris Bay. Thank you for doing this, Chris. I appreciate you very much, man.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you do with this platform, and I hope nothing but endless success for you.
Thank you, brother. That's going to do it for another episode of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling. What an awesome dude. Didn't I tell you just how an all-around good guy Chris Bay is? I just want to take this time to thank Chris again for being on this podcast and having this conversation with me. Chris doesn't do a lot of podcasts. He very rarely does them. And when he does, he's not really telling super personal stories like the ones that he has shared with me. So I feel very grateful that Chris was willing to open up to me and tell me about his life, his journey, and the lessons that he's learned, because I know that he knows that by sharing his story that he can help somebody out there. If someone out there was helped by something that Chris shared either today or in last week's part 1 episode, hit him up at Dashing Chris Bay on Twitter and Instagram and let him know what Chris said that might have, touched you in a special way, hit you different, something that you weren't expecting from a wrestling podcast. But like I say, this isn't just a wrestling podcast. It's a life podcast where we talk about how wrestling and life collide and all the wonderful lessons we can learn in between. And we heard some awesome ones this week from Chris Bay. You heard at the end of our conversation there, him talking about his journey into the music world. Go to Spotify, type Chris Bay into the search section of Spotify, and he will pop up, and you can listen to some wicked, awesome tunes from our friend Chris. I'll make it even easier for you. Go into the show notes. I've got the link right there to Chris's Spotify. Click on that. It'll open it up for you, and you can listen to some of his wicked, awesome tunes. And you can stay tuned for all the really cool music that he's got. They're going to be coming out soon, like you just heard him talking about in our conversation. So thank you again, Chris. You're awesome. We love you. Thanks for being on the show. Next week, we have a different guest, a new guest, one that maybe some people weren't expecting me to have on this show. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to tell you right now. If you want to find out who next week's guest is going to be, and I know some of you are, man, you are going to love it. You are going to be super pumped to hear from next week's guest. Go on over to my social media. I'm all on all major platforms at Cody Deaner, and I will be announcing in just a few days who that guest is going to be. And then I will also be putting up the full conversation with next week's guest early and ad-free over the coming days on patreon.com/Cody Deaner. If you want to support this project, go give me a couple bucks over on Patreon. You get a bunch of access to exclusive content, bonus stories, unedited raw footage of these conversations all over on patreon.com/Cody Deaner. You can go to prowrestlingtees.com/Cody Deaner, buy yourself a t-shirt, go to cameo.com/Cody Deaner, get yourself a personalized video. Head on over to restwhendead.ca and check out the collection. You've got your Cody Deaner signature shirt. You've got your Crazy Steve signature shirt. You've got your Jody Threat signature shirt, as well as all the wicked awesome designs and hats, fitness apparel, not just for the dudes, for the ladies too. They got a really cool woman's cut tee, as well as a tank top. Mrs. Deaner loves her Conquer Everything yellow women's tank top. Go check that out over on restwhendead.ca. You also heard me talking about ceofit.ca. All of your supplementary needs, not just for your body, but for your brain. They got all the best stuff. And if you're in Canada, I just want to give a special shout out to all my Canadian listeners for your support, helping support me as a fellow Canadian. You can help support a Canadian fitness supplement company, ceofit.ca. Got all the best stuff, and they're giving you on free shipping on any order over $120. And man, you're going to be able to easily find $120 worth of really cool stuff and needed stuff. Only the top of the line quality stuff you're going to get at ceofit.ca. Thank you once again to my listeners for all of the support. Thanks for coming and listening to the second part of my conversation with Chris Bay. We will see you next week for our new guest. And it doesn't matter which guest we're talking to, you are going to know that by the end of the conversation, man, you know, one thing is true. Wrestling is life. Is wrestling. We'll see you next week, guys.
Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Is wrestling.